Hello again. Thank you for again watching another episode of the One Percentile. What I'm talking about today is how JBL speakers started with this guy right here, and how they evolved into being one of the greatest speaker companies in the world. And what this is there was a company called there was this company called Capitol Records, and it's a very famous building that they have in downtown LA. It's a tall circular building, and that's where they record albums. Now, the Beatles recorded their first album in London. And after that, they came to the United States and went to Capitol Records to record their second album. Now, the engineers at Capitol Records had gone to a company called JBL Speaker Company, which was located in Burbank and also Glendale here in the San Fernando Valley. And they had some specifications that they wanted the JBL company to make, which were going to be monitors. And they first said it has to have a 12-inch bass speaker, and then it has to have about a 5-inch mid-range speaker, and then it had to have about a 2 or a 3-inch high frequency tweeter, and they had to have crossovers. So the input from the recording would go to the bass, would go to the mid range, and go to the tweeter. So JBL made 4 of these speakers, and this is one, and this is known as the 4312. And it is the last of the speakers that they made. They started out with the 4310, the 4311, and then this is the final product, the 4312. When the Beatles arrived and they started recording, and then they heard the reproduction of the recordings, which were played right on these speakers right here, studio speakers. They said, "Oh my God, it sounds perfect." That is, it hasn't added anything to it, hadn't taken anything away. What they heard is what they recorded. And they said, "We want these speakers." So they went to their lawyer, and in their contract, they said, "We want each Beatle to have 2 of these speakers. We want to take them home to London." And the Capitol Rushers said, "Okay." So what happened is the Beatles left, they went to London, and they took 2 speakers for each Beatle. That was 8 speakers. So they're gone. And so the engineers had to go to JBL and say, "Hey, we need 4 more speakers," you know, and which they did. And after that, the Rolling Stones came in, and they wanted to, they had to record at Capitol Records. And when they got to hear what they had recorded and how perfect it came back without any coloration or distortion or anything else like that, they went to the lawyers because they heard about what the Beatles said. "We want each of the Stones. There were 5 of them to have 2 of these, for stereo." And they got them. So off they went. So the Capitol engineers had to go back to JBL, says, "We need 4 more." And these different groups kept coming in, and they heard the perfect speakers, these monitors. And so finally the executives at JBL says, "Hey, wait a minute, each of these things are custom made." Now, what I mean by custom made is the box here, it's made of 1-inch thick walnut. Okay, and that's why they have this beautiful finish on here. Okay, it's oiled walnut, and they said, why don't we make a commercial version of this? Because it looks like we've got something that everybody, would want to have. And so the executive said, okay, let's make a commercial version of it, but we have to really make it unique. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a unique grill for it. And the grill that they came up with, which were going to be the customers could choose brown, black, or orange, or blue. And this is we're going to make it out of foam. They're going to have these foam squares on it. And this is the grill that they came up with right here. One of the most unique grills ever seen. And that's what they did to make it distinctive. Because all the other grills that the other companies were making for their speakers had black cloth on them. So the executive says, okay, we've got a unique grill. Now we have to give it a unique name. And they said, okay, how about if we just call it the L100 Century Speaker? Actually, they changed it to, instead of just speaker, but bookshelf speaker, because they wanted to make sure that people who would buy these things could put them on a bookshelf, or they could put them on the floor. So they're not going to take up a lot of room. They would advertise it. People by word of mouth would come in to these high fidelity stores and says, hey, I want to take a look at these Century speakers, because that's what they use. They use the Century speakers. So they would hear them and they would buy them. Well, I found out about them, and I'm working at Lockheed Aircraft, and they're paying me pretty well. And so I walked in and I says, how much these things cost? And they says, $275 each. I says, I'll take them. And that's how I ended up with my first JBL speakers. And the love affair began right there. All right. So what happened after that is I extended my love affair into what are known as the monitors, studio monitors. And these were developed by JBL for tours. So when the musicians would go on stage and stuff like that, they would be able to bring these particular monitors, and which were had 4 speakers, and this would be for the audience. And I'll show you what it looks like. Here is where you take the grill off, and here are the 1, 2, 3, 4 speakers, and they made all different kinds of sizes for these.
Is this your favorite speaker?
Yes.
Out of all of your JBLs, this is your favorite?
These are my favorite speakers, the 4-way. Yep.
They sure do look great.
And they sure sound great too. So these are my favorite speakers, the 4-way, and they really sound great. And these are in my bedroom, my living room, and here I have my television, which is mounted on the wall, and it has all these dinky little speakers in them. Okay, so what I did is I went and had a custom-made cabinet. And then I went and bought the speakers themselves. And here it is, built right in. And there's a big 15-inch speaker. There's a high-frequency tweeter right here. And down here, there's a horn, mid-range horn. And I put in 2 crossovers. And I have one on the other side, so now when I watch television, I'm going to be hearing the sound in stereo on these JBL speakers.
Wow, so you really do have an exception with JBL speakers.
Yep. Because as I said, I don't want to hear the sound out of those little dinky speakers that they put in television sets.
You want the real
I
deal.
want the real deal. So what happened is that the executives said, okay, let's go into mass production. So they had the Glendale and the Burbank factories make these. Remember, these cabinets all had to be handmade and hand assembled. Now, they started making them in 1970, and they went out for 10 years to 1980, and that's when they stopped production. And in that 10-year period, they made 250,000 of these speakers. Now, 50 years later, the executives said, okay, you know, people are still buying these things. They're buying them used, they're buying them reconditioned, they're going to eBay and everything else like that. Why don't we come out with a 50-year anniversary edition? And that's what they did. They got together and they says, okay, let's have the same size that they would, have the same speakers, but put in speakers with the latest improvements on them. Make sure that we made the crossovers new and improved, but we're still going to have the walnut cabinets, but we're going to take those grills. And here's the problem they had with the grills, is that we have smog in Los Angeles, we have smog in Tokyo, we have smog in New York, and it would get into those foam grills, and they would attack them, and the foam grills would eventually disintegrate into just dust. And so what happened is that people started complaining about this, and then they had to go to these hi-fi stores and buy brand new grills. So when they decided to come out with a new edition, they said, let's use a new material that's not going to disintegrate, and that's what they put in. Now, here are the latest editions. As you see, they look just like the early ones. There's the three speakers, the bass, the mid-range, and the tweeter. But all of these are brand new speakers, highly modified and up to date with the latest electronics. And here is the new grill. Now, to give you an idea of just how smart these executives are, they said, listen, what we'll do is we'll have two divisions. One will be the commercial, and the other one will be the retail. So the commercials is we're going to still make these 4312s, because there are other studios which are recording studios, and they want these. Okay, they don't want the and so they started making these as for the commercials. And what I did is in my house, I have a 4-bedroom house, and so I turned one of my bedrooms into an office, and I wanted to have a couple of some speakers, bookshelf speakers, that I can listen to, and so I went and to a regular high fidelity store, and guess what? They're now selling these speakers right here, commercial, which don't have the foam on them or anything else like that. And I bought 2 of those. So that's how come you're looking at one of them, which was taken out of my office. Now, later, what they did is they expanded the commercial to where they started making studio monitors. And again, uh, there were these recording studios that wanted something bigger than the bookshelf, and so they started developing 4-speaker bookshelves. which were now called studio monitors. And then when these different rock and roll groups started to go on tour, they went to JBL and says, "Hey, would you make larger ones, which would have more power to be able to exert the sound to large audiences?" And now we're going to have some fun. A number of years ago, there was a company called Maxell, and Maxell made really good cassette tapes. So what they did is they wanted to demonstrate just how powerful these tapes were in being able to include a lot of loud sound, powerful music, etc., etc. So they did a television commercial, and what they did is they took a person who was sitting in a chair. They had a table next to him. They had a martini glass, and they had uh, uh, somebody who was his butler come up and offer him a Maxell tape. And then the butler went over across from the person who's sitting there, and they used a JBL Century speaker. You can see it there. It's the one that's got the foam on it and everything else like that. And they started playing a piece of music for them. And they used Wagner's Ride of the Valkyrie. And boy, you can't get a more powerful or loud piece of music than that. And and these big 12-inch speakers, uh, when they start to produce the sound, there's a physical principle called, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So when the cone of the speaker would push out and move this air towards the person who's listening, and then it would go back, it would have a reaction in the back. And so this air that was inside the box would go through a portal, a hole, and also head towards the listener. And so the sound and all that air coming hitting him pushed his hair back. It knocked over the martini, and and this Wagner Ride of the Valkyries, would hit them frontal, and that was their commercial. And boy, did it sell tape. Wait for a thumbs up.
The usual, sir.
Even after 500 plays, our high-fidelity tape still delivers high fidelity. Maxell, it's worth it.
Written by Richard Wagner, and he titled the piece "The Ride of the Valkyries." Now, Valkyries are warrior women. And what they would do is they would fly over a battlefield and they would look for warriors that were heroes. And they would pick them up, the dead heroes, and they would fly them up to Valhalla. And Valhalla is the German version of heaven. Now, here is a picture of a Valkyrie. So thank you very much for watching this podcast. And at the end, I always like to have a quote from Shakespeare. And since we were talking about Valkyrie women and and stuff like that, which is war, I'm going to talk about something that Shakespeare quoted in Henry V. And it was just before the Battle of Agincourt. And a lot of you have probably heard this speech, which is, "We few, we happy few, we band of brothers." So, thank you very much for watching this latest podcast. Make sure that you reach down and punch the subscribe, like buttons, And if you have any comments, I'll respond to them.